All right, now I want to bring up a fiction MA student, Morgan Smith, who will do our proper introduction. So thank you.
Can everyone hear me? Cool. I'm going to start off tonight by telling you about one of my favorite movies. It's called The Guard. It takes place in Ireland's West region, where a local cop disrupts the operations of an international drug syndicate. As the movie opens, we see a car filled with 5 young men in tracksuits drinking. They're swerving all over the road. They crash. Everyone is killed. The movie's hero, an Irish cop, arrives and roots through one of the young men's tracksuit pockets, finds a bag of drugs, throws most of it into the sea, except for a tab of acid, which he places on his tongue. He stares out of the bay at the gray clouds rolling across the North Atlantic sky and says, "What a beautiful fucking day." It is one of the best, funniest openings to a movie I've seen. Since starting grad school, I've been looking for that kind of world-weary voice, one that leaves the reader feeling like all there's left to do is laugh at the world and call it beautiful. And I found it in Young Skins, Colin Barrett's debut short story collection. I first heard of Colin Barrett when UNT announced the names for this semester's Visiting Writers series, and within an hour I'd ordered Young Skins, described as a collection of darkly humorous, gritty tales that follows the experiences of hard-living young adults in the pubs and nightclubs of rural Glen Bay, a town based on those in County Mayo, where Barrett grew up before going to school in Dublin. When you bought a copy after the reading, you'll notice its back cover is chock full of blurbs from names like Anne Enright and Colm Toibin, some choice selections. An adventure in the tender art of the unexpected. Knocked me on my ass. It's moody, funny, vibrant, and vivid. A writer to savor. My town is nowhere you have been, the narrator of The Clancy Kid, the collection's first story, says in the opening line, but you know its ilk. And you do. And I did, and you will. Anyone who's been hungover on a Sunday morning will recognize the aching, concrete gray pall of this collection's mornings. Anyone who's left a difficult party early to return to a lonely bedroom or walked home under street lamps and starlight will recognize a part of ordinary life rendered lyrically in Barrett's surprising pitch-black prose. Also from The Clancy Kid. There is the comfort of routine in our routine, but also the mystery of that routine's persistence. Barrett has likened writing to scrabbling around in the dark, in the murk, and divesting yourself, at least temporarily, of the obligation to think in clear lines and to a specific purpose, which, in Young Skins, culminates in an engaging read dripping in insight and sincerity. Young Skins won the 2014 Frank O'Connor International Short Story Prize, the Guardian First Book Award, and the Rooney Prize for Irish Literature, and has been translated into 8 languages so far. One of the stories, Calm with Horses, is being made into a feature film produced by DNC Films, Film 4, and Element Pictures. Barrett's short stories and nonfiction have appeared in The New Yorker, Granta, A Public Space, The New Statesman, The Guardian, and other magazines and journals. Barrett was one of the 5 under 35 honorees for the National Book Foundation in the United States in 2015, and in 2018, he was selected as one of the 4 protégés of the Rolex Arts Initiative. If you'll allow me to be so bold, I'll add another award to that list. Whenever I finish a book I love, I close it between my hands after reading the last word and kiss it on the spine. And that did not seem enough for Young Skins. I want to grow old with this book. And I turned 27 while reading it, so in a way I already have. Not really. But what my mid-20s revealed to me, and what Young Skins reinforced, is how impermanent the low-stakes invincibility of your early 20s is, how the ghosts of those experiences stay with you, forever imitated but never re-experienced, forever just out of reach. All that's left to do with them is crack a wry smile and call them beautiful. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming to UNT, Colin Barrett.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Morgan, and thanks to Miro and everyone else who helped organise to get me down here. I'd never been to Texas before, and nobody ever said it was this wet, so it's like Ireland. I'm going to read. I'm just putting on my stopwatch here. Don't mind me. I'm going to read an excerpt from the collection, Young Skins, the opening of a story called Stand Your Skin, and then I might follow that up, just an extract from it, and then I'll probably follow that up with from my work in progress, a novel I'm working on. So it's also set in Mayo. There's a lot of bar scenes, a lot of parties, a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs. So it's within the wheelhouse. So so hopefully you won't get bored. So I'll start with Stand Your Skin. Bat is hungover, Bat is late. At the rear of the Maxall service station, he heels the kickstand of his Honda 150, lets the cycle's chrome blue body slant beneath him until its weight is taken by the stand. Bat dismounts, pries off his helmet, black-tinted visor, luminescent yellow Cobra decal pasted to the dome, and a scuzzy cascade of dark hair plummets free to his ass. Bat makes for the station's restroom. The restroom is little bigger than a public telephone box. Its windowless confines contain a tiny sink and cracked mirror, a naked bulb, and lidless shitter operated by a fitfully responsive flush handle. There is not a single sheaf of bog roll anywhere. A big brown daddy longlegs pedals airily in the sink basin. Bat watches the creature describe a flustered circle trapped. He could splat the thing out of existence. With a mindful sweep of his hand, instead sends it unscathed over the rim. Bat gathers his mane at the nape, slinks a blue elastic band from his wrist, and fashions a ponytail, as Dungan, his supervisor, insists. Bat handles his hair delicately. Its dense length is crackly and stiff, an inextricable nest of flubs, snarls, and knots, due to the infrequency with which Bat submits to a wash. Bat's head hurts. He drank 6 beers on the roof of his house last night, which he does almost every night now. The pain is a rooted throb radiating outwards like a skull-sized toothache, and his eyes mildly burn. Working his contact lenses in this morning, he subjected his corneas to a prolonged and shaky-handed thumb-fucking. A distant dental instrument drone fills his ears like fluid. Hangovers exacerbate Bat's tinnitus. He runs the hot and cold taps. Saliva-temperatured and textured water splurge from both. He splashes his face and watches the water drip like glue from his chin. Bat was never a good-looking lad. Even before Tansy cracked his face in half, he knows that. His features are and always have been round and nubby, irremediably homely, exuding all the definition of a bowl of mashed-up spuds. His eyes, at least, are distinctive, though not necessarily in a good way. They are thick-lashed, purplishly pupilled and primed glintingly wide. They suggest urgent, unseemly appeal. "You look constantly as if in want," his old dear chided him all up through childhood. Even now she will occasionally snap at him. "What is it, Eamon?" Apropos of nothing, Bat merely sitting there, watching TV or tuning his guitar or hand-rolling a cigarette for her. "Nothing," Bat will mutter. "You are a mutterer, Eamon," the old dear will insist. "You always were," she'll add, by way of implying she does not ascribe all blame for that to the boot to the face. The boot to the face. Nubbin Tansy, may he rest in pieces, Munro's chipper, years gone now. Bat jabs his cheek with his finger, pushes in. His jaw still clicks when he opens it wide enough. 6 separate operations, 92% articulation recovered, and the brunt of the visible damage surgically effaced, but for a couple of minute white divots in his left cheek and a crooked droop to the mouth on that side. It's slight but distinct, the droop, a nipped outward twisting of the lip, an unhinging that makes him look always a little gormless. Damage abides beneath the surface. Bat can feel by their feelinglessness those pockets of frozen muscle and inert tissue where the nerves in his face are blown for good. Bat had been known as Bat for years. The nickname derived from his surname, Badigan, but after the boot and the droop, a few smart-arses took to calling him Sly as in Sly Stallone. Sly didn't take, thank fuck. He was too entrenched in the town consciousness as Bat. None but the old ear call him Eamon now. Bat pams more water onto his face, slaps his cheeks to get the blood shifting. The beers don't help, of course. But the fact is the headaches come regardless, leadenly routine now. In addition, there are the migraines, mercifully rarer though much more vicious, 2-day-long blowouts of agonizing snow blindness that at their worst put Bat whimpering and supine on the floor of the bedroom. a pound of wet cloth mashed into his eye sockets to staunch, however negligibly, the pain. The doctors insist the head troubles have nothing to do with it, but Bat knows they are another bequeathal of the boot to the face. He leaves the restroom and keys himself through the service door into the staff room. He deposits the bike helmet on the couch, unpeels his leather jacket, registers with a pulse of mortification the spicy whang peeling off his own hide. On the staff room counter he spies, amid a row of other items, a stick of women's roll-on. Must be Taines. He picks it up, worms his fist into each sleeve of his Maxall shirt, and hastily kneads his pits with the spearminty-smelling stuff. As he places the roll-on back on the counter, he notices a curled black hair adhering to the scented ball. He tweezes it off and flicks it to the floor. Out front, Dungan, the store manager, mans the main till. Dungan is old, 50s, 60s, whatever. He's the sole adult and authority figure in a work environment otherwise populated by belligerently indolent youngsters. Bat, Dungan says. Yeah. Take your particular timepiece. Wind the big hand forward 15 minutes. Keep it there. You might show up on the dot once in your life. Humped above the cash register, Dungan resembles nothing so much as his own freshly revived corpse. His skin is loose and blanched, its pigmentation leached of some vital essence, and what remains of his thin grey hair is drawn in frailly distinct comb lines across his head, mortuary neat. His glasses are tinted in shading the eyes, but you can tell Dungan is alive, because the man is always snufflingly, sputteringly ill. His maladies, minor but interminable, head colds, bronchial complaints, and dermal eruptions hound him through the season's dims and magnifications. What needs doing, Bat sighs. Dungan looks over the rims of his glasses. The white of one eye is a blood spatter of detonated capillaries. Sleeves, Bat. What did I say about sleeves? He nods at Bat's arms. The tattoos can't be on display, lad. Plain or black or white undershirts in future, please. But everyone knows me, Bat says. Professionalism is an end in itself, Dungan opines. Now, there's 6 pallets of dry stock out there that need shelving, and the rotisserie wants a scrub after that. We'll just have to try and keep you out of sight as much as we can. So that's the opening of the story, and Bat is the main protagonist. He works in the petrol station. He's friends with a couple of the he's in his 20s, and he's friends with a couple of teenage kids who are there. And basically all that happens in the story is he organises to go to the pub with them. And that's it, really. But he lives with his mother, so I'm just going to read a little extract where he's sitting at home eating his dinner, and his mother runs a kind of to earn an extra few quid, she kind of cuts the local kid's hair. Dinner is boiled spuds, beans and frozen fish. Bat bowls his supper from a sideboard in the kitchen under the solemn surveillance of 2 bullet-headed 8-year-old boys. The boys are seated side by side by the open back door, the old dear looming above them, wielding an electric razor and comb. The old dear cuts hair on the side, a home operation job. Her clientele comprise mainly of the youngest offspring of her extended family. Tonight's customers have the wide-spaced eyes and aggrieved, jutting mouths, hereditary to the Minions. The Minions are cousins from the past father's side, a clan notorious locally for its compulsive run-ins with the law and general ingenuity for petty civil dissension. Bad seeds, though Bat suspects the old dear is perversely proud of the association. The old dear is shearing the boys simultaneously in stages, not one after the other. She does the left side of one lad's head, then the other lad's left, then right, top, and finally back. Kitchen towels are draped across the boy's shoulders, and a tawny mote of chopped hair encircles the chair legs. The back door is open so the old dear can smoke as she works, the draught escorting the smoke of a rollie out into the evening away from the boy's lungs. Above Bat's head, a wall-mounted TV plays the Aussie soap Home and Away, but the boy's eyes do not leave Bat as he works at his dinner. The mane confuses little kids who assume only women have long hair, and there's no woman in town with hair as long as Bat's. He's conscious also they may be eyeing the bulky hydraulics of his jaw as he chews. One of the boys slowly raises a hand, extends his forefinger, and begins boring at a nostril, a movement that necessitates a slight shift in his posture. Don't be moving, Bat says, or she'll have your lug off, wrenching on one of his own earlobes for effect. She has a necklace of severed ears upstairs, made out of the lugs of little boys who wouldn't keep still. The lad stops boring but keeps his finger socketed in his nose, his eyes widen. That's not true, the other lad puffs indignantly. Shut up, the lot of you, the old dear says, though of course she doesn't refute Bat's claim. What's your name, Bat says to the lad who spoke. Trevor. A dim memory of a double christening moons back that Bat didn't go to. And that lad, excavating his face beside you, is Jojo, so... Yeah, Trevor says. And where's your mammy gone, Trevor? Bat asks. The pub, Jojo says. Is she out looking for a brother or sister for you? Bat says, grinning at the old dear as the boys look on, puzzled. Dervila, the old dear sighs. Lord bless us and save us, but you may not be yards off the mark there, aiming. Heads down, she barks, and the minion boys, perfectly in sync, fire their chins into their chests. Bat smiles. They can be tough and they can be rough, but there's not a delinquent alive, budding or fully formed. The old dear can't crone into submission. Before the roof and beers in bed, Bat hits the road. A night spin deep into the countryside's emptinesses. The Honda is no power racer, but watching the dimpled macadam hurtle away beneath the monocular glare of his headlight, Bat feels he is moving too fast to exist. As he dips into and leans out of the crooks and curves of the road, he becomes the crooks and curves. A bristling silence hangs over the deep adjacent acres, the pastures, woodlands and hills sprawled out all around him. It goes up and up and up, the silence, and Bat can hear it, above even the hot scream of the engine. His nerves are gently sparking by the time he lopes across the mossed asphalt shingles of the roof, cradling his six-pack. Bat plants his back against the chimney and drinks, waits for the moment the night becomes too cold, the air like a razor working itself to acuity against the strap of his arms. Only then will he descend to the black square of his bedroom window. And that's that section, that's that story. That's from Youngstons, that's from the book you all have to buy. There was the lads were saying, yeah, do buy it, but someone left an Amazon review of it now, and they said, a great read for all the family. Give it 5 stars. That was the entirety of the review. And it's all just like people drinking and fighting and stuff. So if your grandmother loves stories about guys, doing donuts in the parking lot and then, fighting people in chip shops, good buy for her. So I'm going to read a little bit from my novel, which is getting close to being done, and it's also set in Mayo, and it's very much in the same sort of milieu and stuff. It's about a kidnapping, and this section doesn't really deal with that. It's about she's pretty much the main character. Her name's Nicola Shandy, and so this is kind of her. She lives with her boyfriend Dylan, who's Dylan English, who's a local kind of drug dealer, and she's quit college and she's moved in with him. And she used to work in a bar part time. She's quit that too. She's basically, sitting around doing drugs, not dealing, and not dealing with life. And so there's Dylan, and then there's his 2 guys, Rubber and Desi. And Rubber and Desi are these 2 enigmatic men that live with Dylan, and latterly with Nicola too. And she, they're kind of a de facto family. But so it's a little bit about that. This was the summer she liked to walk to the supermarket to get those freezer bags of ice you kept in the freezer for when you needed a drink. The packaging said cubed, but they weren't cubed. There were 5 kilo bags of ice churned to the consistency of gravel you could sling over your shoulder and haul straight home, at least until the frozen weight of it began to burn your neck. Then it was a question of what you could endure. It was a quarter-hour walk each way. Nikki endured it. She alternated shoulders, the neck of the T-shirt sopping wet, and wings of her collarbone worried numb by the time she got back to Dylan's. To get to the supermarket, you took the slope at the rear of the estate, hopped a ditch onto a patch of pale brown dirt, and followed it until it turned into pavement. On the far side of the path, the Balik woods began. The woods were calming to regard and walk in proximity to, an acre of identically spaced, identically sized conifers pointing straight up like fletched arrows. This was a summer she'd almost completely stopped going out, but she liked that walk to the supermarket and back, toting that big bag of weeping ice. Nikki got the ice because she liked ice in her Coke and vodka, ice in her Coke and rum, ice in her Coke and Southern Comfort, ice in her Coke and Jameson. The ice had nothing to do with the weather. Irish summers gave you maybe 5 days total, would merit sitting outside with a chilled drink. But June to September was party time in Dillon's. All year round was party time in Dillon's, but the summer especially so. The party periodically dole-drummed and never ended. Nicky wanted to be a good host like Dillon. When his customers partook, Dillon did too. He could. He possessed one of those enigmatically property constitutions that meant he could drink all evening and never get drunk, do any amount of drugs and never get wired. Nicky's constitution was generically susceptible to influence. In addition to the drink, there was the drugs you just couldn't get out of the way of. Enter any room at any time of day, and within minutes, you'd be buzzed off the standing fog of secondary smoke. And that was why in her daily inventorying, Nicky never counted hash, because even if she hadn't been directly smoking it, she would have been inhaling the fumes anyway. Minus that and the alcohol, and she wasn't doing anything else regularly. Pills now and then, though she no longer went out clubbing, so pills much less than she used to. The Coke was the only thing. The Coke had been gaining prominence, admittedly, even though she hated Coke, the way it revved your whole system and made you run at the mouth like a prize prick. She got back, dumped the ice in the freezer. Dillon was in the sitting room with the boys, Robert Deckhart and Desi Routledge. She didn't particularly want to see them, but she went in anyway. Robert and Desi were on the sofa. Dillon was occupying the grey shearing chair by the empty fireplace. Dillon had one shoe and sock off, his naked foot hoisted onto his knee, clipping at his toenails. "Crack there now, Shandy," Robert said. "Not much," she said. "You're drenched." One of Nicky's sleeves was dripping. Her shoulder felt dumb as a punched lip. "It's warm out," she said. "It's not that warm," Desi said. "I was going to fix drinks," Nicky said. "Stop, I'll do that," Robert said. "What are you having?" Robert came up off the sofa. He lifted and reproachfully snapped back down the bill of his baseball cap. Robert's hair was going. He was sensitive about it. "I was going to do a rum and coke," Nicky said. "Drink?" Robert asked Dillon. "What time is it?" Dillon asked Nicky. "Just gone 5. We're heading to Madigan's later," he told her. "What's happening in Madigan's?" Madigan's was the bar Nicky tended at, used to. She'd not done a shift there in several months. Flynn, the manager, had given up Colin on her. "Conlin's back in town. Colin wants to hang," Dillon said, easing carefully off the white strip of the nail of his big toe. Colin was an old friend of Dillon's who now lived in Galway. Colin was trying to be an artist, a painter. He produced huge canvases of amorphous, cloudy nothings that looked simultaneously painstaking and half-arsed, the kind of stuff you'd walk right by in the atrium of a bank. Dillon, meanwhile, had actually been able to draw. The sketchbooks were rotting in the shed of his mother's house now, but Nicky had seen some of his stuff from secondary school. He had a knack for anatomy, posed bodies, human faces with precisely smudged mouths and wary, animate eyes, pages of disembodied hands spectrally gesturing. They were good. They looked like what they were meant to look like. Dillon hinged off the nail and palmed it. His removed sock was laid out on the carpet in front of him, and Nicky could see the flecks of cut nail collected on its wilted black shape. He added the latest nail. Robert was still standing there, awaiting Dillon's reply about the drink to the question about the drinks. Dillon sometimes did this, indulged a lordly prerogative to not immediately respond. "I'm okay," Dillon said eventually, and Robert headed into the kitchen. "Do you want me to come?" Nicky said, meaning Madigan's. "That's up to you," Dillon said, "if you're, What?" Nicky said. Dillon shrugged. "Inclined, that's all, either way." "You're not gone on Conlon, are you?" Desi conjectured from the sofa. "I don't mind Conlon," Nicky said, though Desi was right. "So come out with us," Desi said. "I'll see." It was hard to tell Robert and Desi's exact ages. They were older than Dillon, late 20s at least, but they could have been in their 30s, even their 40s. They dressed young in tracksuit bottoms, football jerseys, hoodies, but their faces were aged, hard-bitten. They were inveterate partiers, which no doubt contributed to the worn-outness of their aspects. Their breakfasts usually consisted of Lucozade and a cigarette at noon, and they routinely bore the seasick complexions and ransacked postures of men knuckling through the heavy weather of another hangover. They were sort of like lackeys. They had one car between them and ran errands for Dylan. They did a great deal of the manual domestic chores, shopping, cleaning, duties that might otherwise have devolved to Nicky, which meant they were Nicky's lackeys too. Whenever she let slip that she needed something done, one or both would volunteer. The ice run she'd had to insist on continuing to do herself. In Robert and Desi's presence, she did most feel her place hierarchically. When she'd first moved in with Dylan after she'd quit college, she'd taken Robert and Desi's initial reticence towards her as a form of hostility, the stony enmity of the territorially jilted or usurped. Then she realised that it was just their attempts at deference, of being polite to her. It wasn't that they weren't speaking to her. They were waiting for her to speak to them, whether under Dylan's orders or of their own volition. They calibrated their temperaments to mirror Nicky's, and because she'd been furtive and standoffish with them in the beginning, they had been too. Once she got looser and more interactive, so did they. Everyone got on now. Robert and Desi were always around, and it wasn't clear they weren't living there. The house was a 3-bedroom. Sometimes they each took a spare room, and sometimes they shared the one. She'd gone into the second-best bedroom one morning and found them there side by side asleep, one face down on his pillow with his dreaming arms slung diagonally across the bare chest of the other. They looked like one being with a surfeit of parts. Robert brought her in her drink. She sat back down beside Desi. The movie Zodiac was playing through the TV. "How many times have you watched this?" she asked him. "It's a good movie," Dylan said. "It's a compelling film, but it wasn't one guy," Desi said sensibly. "The sham wrote letters to the papers," Robert said. "He wrote cryptograms," Dylan corrected him. "One sham wrote letters making a lot of claims," Desi said. "I believe several of the murders were connected. The guy did some, but then he started embellishing." "That bit where he comes up on the couple at the lake," Robert said. "With the hangman's hood in his head," Dylan said. On screen, the cops were inspecting a taxi abandoned on a street corner. The driver had been murdered with a pistol shot to the back of the head. The 2 detectives were working through how the shooting went down. The handsome detective with the curly hair had shaped the gun with his fingers and thumb behind the ear of a third cop who was standing in for the victim. "I wait for him to park," the curly-headed detective says, channeling the killer. "I don't want him hitting the accelerator when I shoot." "He stops, puts it in park," the second detective says, narrating. "I shoot him on the right side. He slumps right," the curly-headed detective says, wincing. "The physics, the position in which they found the body don't add up." "Maybe you've got your hand on his collar when you shoot," the second detective says. "So why do you get in the front seat?" "For the money." "You could just reach over the front seat, pull out his wallet." "So why do you get in the front seat?" "I'm an idiot," the curly-headed detective says. "But you're not," the second detective says. "You waited for him to put it in park." Dylan, Robert and Desi had gone quiet again, submitted to the flow of the movie. Nicky took a drink of her drink. "You always think they're going to figure it out," Robert said, "and then they don't." The boys got a car into town and she stayed behind because what she liked was the idea of walking to the pub alone in the cooling dusk light. She let the movie play out on the TV to the end, though she mostly stayed in the kitchen, mixing and drinking another drink and scrolling through her phone. Upstairs, she turned the shower on to let the water run hot. In the bedroom, she put on music. She stripped her torso in a sluggish, robotic, piecemeal fashion. She switched songs, counted hazily back the days since she last washed. Half undressed, she went downstairs and fixed a drink. Seated on the edge of the bed, she switched songs, worked off a sock. She studied the exposed foot, the nails of her toes with their thickening white margins. Your body had its routines and processes, and it perpetuated them, irrespective of you. You were a janitor, at best a curatist of your body, responsible for its sanitation and presentation. You fueled it and disposed of its waste, showered it, dressed it, brushed its hair, cut its nails. You could choose not to do these things and it would go on without your compliance as long as it could. The concave drumming of the water into the empty basin of the bath, it had been running so long she could have had 2 showers by now. She went in, wrenched the spigot, and the stream choked to a startled stop. She sat on the edge of the bed with a clotted, shining feeling in her chest that would not dissipate. Out the window, the street lamps were coming on, but there was enough light in the sky that the lamps of the estate generated no coronas. She wanted to be dressed and made up with her earphones in, already walking into town. She wanted it to be dark out already. But she couldn't get dressed until she finished undressing. That was the thing. You couldn't do anything until you did another thing first. Thank you. So, that's it. That's my reading. I'm more than happy to answer any questions if anyone has any kind of general questions about writing or about the book in particular, or about, I'm qualified to speak about writing, being unemployed, working in a phone for a phone company, and that's about it, really. If anyone has any questions.
Does your unpublished novel, does it have a solid title yet?
Does my novel have a title yet? Nikki's the main character, but Dylan English is her boyfriend. He's a drug dealer, and his family figure in the English family. So he comes from a family of brothers. So currently it's called The English Brothers. I wanted to just call it The English. I did like the idea of writing a book, an Irish author writing a book called The English. That's called The English, but there's no English people in it. But so I currently, I think it's English Brothers, but I don't know, I might go back. So it kind of changes. In Stand Your Skin, when I was reading, I gave the surname the Minions to one of the characters. And there's kind of Irish names that are quite close to that, but I wasn't aware about these little fucking yellow guys in there. and I originally, with the novel, I gave them the surname the Minions because I liked it. And I was like, the novel, we call it the Minions. And my agent was like, the Minions exists, and it's just not going to work. So they own that title, or they own that name. Yeah. Yes.
Comes into your thinking, or whether you relish the conversation between those genres at this point. I just think it must be very hard to keep those callings separate.
Yeah. I never, and I don't think about it. One of the stories miraculously has been made into a feature film, but I had very little practical input into that. They got a proper screenwriter to do it, so. I haven't seen it yet, but hopefully it doesn't suck. But But I never thought. I didn't think about them. I certainly didn't think of if I'm getting your question right, I didn't think about a parallel life for them as films or anything like that. I thought of it first and foremost as fiction. I was talking about this with the guys earlier. I mean, the story that's been adapted is a novella. It's about 70 pages, 80 pages. So it's probably, in some ways, adapting a shorter piece of fiction, and in that way a filmmaker can sort of add facets to it, rather than if you're trying to adapt a 500-page novel and you just got to gut the thing. It's possibly easier, but I never thought about it. I just think, when I met the producers and the guys who wanted to buy the options to do it, they kind of thought it was really cinematic, but it wasn't an adjective. It wasn't something that was in my head, and it wasn't one I would have. I guess I have a kind of visual disposition about the way, just things like the way characters look, and thinking. I do think visually and spatially about scenes, and I'm always, just because I love writing about it, I love writing about the texture of things in the world, and the inanimate objects as well as non-human, animals or anything. I enjoy that just as much as writing about as ideas and the dialogue and conversations and the sort of drawing out psychological and emotional aspects of the characters. So maybe that somehow lent itself. But it's something, when I'm sitting down writing, I don't think about it. I don't think about it at all, and I kind of, I don't know. I mean, I'm still working on this thing, and if anyone's seen the David Fincher movie Zodiac, I kind of just. But I haven't seen that much, and I wasn't thinking about it. It was like, people watch TV all the time, so I might as well just show what they're watching for a minute, But, Yes?
How have you felt about transitioning from doing more short stories to doing a whole novel?
Yeah, it was tough. It's tough. It took me a while, yeah. Like this collection came out like maybe published in September 2013. And I haven't published a book since. I've published a few stories, and I've been working on the novel. And I've practically another collection of short stories written inadvertently, but it was hard. It was hard to transition. Yeah, you just go from with a short story. You're constantly looking to get to the point essentially as quickly as possible. Even in a lot of my stories are quite free form and not very plot driven, but nonetheless you're getting to you have to bring it to a point quite quickly. So, you are looking to see what you can leave out and what you can just imply rather than have to directly exposit. So I think just switching tacks and having to write novels which are long, and there's lots of them. There's so many words in them. It was kind of tough. So it was hard. I mean, I wouldn't, anyone who has an ability to switch, disciplines, I greatly respect, because I have first-hand experience of how difficult it is. Yeah. Anything else? Yes?
Your characters seem like...
Sorry.
Oh,
There was someone behind you, but sure.
Oh.
I can answer both. You go ahead.
Your characters seem so, down to earth, and are they based on real people at all, or...?
No, I mean, they're certainly, if you threw them all in the bucket, they might be a resemblance. They're not, there's no one directly, but, definitely my people I grew up with and stuff. I make no bones about it. It's set in a fictional West of Ireland town. It's pretty, it was very important to me to write a piece of fiction. That's how I kind of process, and, I find it very freeing to write fiction rather than, I didn't have much interest in kind of doing a non-fiction version of it or anything like that. So there's definitely there's definitely correspondences and but it's more just of a general sensibility of the kind of people I grew up with and their outlook on life, their black humor, their in the face of adversity, their kind of wittiness and self-awareness. Which are things I sometimes think there's, when you read something or watch something about poor or marginal people or whatever, working class or provincial life, it's often bleak, but with no, and miserable, but with no. They don't have the agency of being able to at having perspective on themselves. If you can follow what I'm trying to articulate, so it's just important to do that, to honour the kind of general sensibility of the people I grew up with. And, I was worried they might hate me and never let me come into the back to Mayo after the book came out, but everyone enjoyed it and really liked it. And there was a woman showed up I was in Dublin and doing a book reading, and one of my friends was out kind of selling the books out front, and a woman, she was about 85, and she came up to him and she said, "Oh, I love this book." And she's from Mayo, she's from my part of the place, quite a quick, very similar to Young's, where it's set. And Tom was he kind of was like, he did that thing. He's like, "Oh, so are you you're going to recommend it to some people?" And he says something like, "You're going to recommend some young people, like your kids or your grandkids or something," which was kind of being accidentally ageist, he's just like, "Oh," and she was like, "Oh no, I wouldn't let them read it," but she was like, "I loved it." Yeah, so yeah, so yeah. Anyone, I've been very happy and humbled with how it was received back home. Yeah. They didn't run me out, so. And just behind you, yeah. I mean, I think it's what brought him to life for me. What brought my protagonist to life was the setting, you know, which is really a basic thing people tell you, like setting as a character. But it's really true, and I ignored it for years and overlooked it. But it wasn't until I started, because I was writing for years, but it wasn't until quite before I wrote these particular stories set in this town called Glanbay, which is fictional. I'd started writing stories in kind of a small provincial town, much like the one I grew up in. And it just, in some way, I don't know how it worked. It somehow catalyzed my imagination and just helped me. These characters and premises started appearing in my mind. Whereas I'd been struggling to find a subject really before then, as everyone does when they're writing. And I really wanted to be a writer, and was convinced I was going to be. But it took just writing. It's so obvious, but like I was in my late 20s and I've been writing for 10 years, and it took me taking my own experiences really, and the world I knew, and writing about that. And after that, yeah, everything changed in my work.
A little bit earlier you mentioned texture, and I was just hoping you might be able to elaborate a little bit on how texture is important to your writing.
I mean, just as I said, just sort of the tangible physical details. When I read a lot of, not that I'm. I'll do like a writing class or give a writing workshop or something, and lots of talented writers and stuff. But people are often tend to be so kind of focusing on their character and moving the plot along that sometimes when I'm reading stuff, I feel like it's just disembodied voices in a void. There's nothing anchoring me in the story. Like they might give the name of a place it's set in, or whatever. But like. I just feel I've always responded to that in writing, and that's the kind of writing I like. I need. You don't need to overdo it, but like I need the writer to ground my physical senses, as many as the 5 senses, as you can engage, because that just really helps with evocation and stuff. And readers are patient. They don't need everything given to them straight away in a story or a book, which is another lesson. It takes a long time to learn. They trust that they'll let you unfold something. And I think a good way to buy their patience is by it's just a way of letting them know that you know what you're doing, in a sense, and that's, I mean, in my reading experiences, that's often the stuff that stays with me most, is just like some incidental physical detail or something, rather than a character or a plot even, and that's, I don't know, it's just whatever, that's my aesthetic disposition, not everyone's like that, but so that's always something I consciously work towards in my writing. Hopefully that's answered it. I don't know. Great questions. I don't know if anyone has a last one or anything, or can wrap it up. Thank you all for coming out on this incredibly rainy day. Thank you.